call me immature, but every time someone tries to use the nomenclature shards in games, I will always read it as shards. I'm sorry, but that's the kind of brain I have. Today we are checking out Into the Grid, which is a very interesting looking cyberpunk deck builder. And story behind this one, I kind of found it by accident because we currently have two people in our Discord that are both working on sci-fi themed deck builders, and one of them was like looking at how to develop their card styles and their interface styles to look more sci-fi, and we were kind of looking at different approaches to that, and I ended up finding this game as a reference point for that. I don't really know much about it. I just thought it visually looked cool. I like cyberpunk as a general kind of genre of media. I think as well, because of the nature of deck building games, we are going to get a game that is very much focused on the kind of hacking and tech and brain side of cyberpunk, rather than something where you run around shooting people. So I'm very interested to see how that's implemented. Because this is a cyberpunk stream, but I need to introduce our special guest for today, which is the cyberpunk edition of Dr. Joe Baxter Webb, where I will be appearing in this form throughout the stream, just to ramp up the cyberpunkness, I guess. On top of that, we also have some synth accompaniment that I will be maybe introducing at some point, depending on whether I can work out the key of the background music of the game we're playing. But, you know, just to keep it extra cyber. I'm going all out today. I wanted to really make everything as cyberpunk as humanly possible, or as transhumanly possible, which is kind of what cyberpunk is all about. I guess the hacking game in Deus Ex looks a bit like this as well. Let's see how this goes. Welcome to the grid. Your objective in every run is to find a core node and breach its mainframe. And this is kind of acting as a gate. So this is very much like a kind of layout, a dungeon layout that we'd see in kind of these games normally, but it's representing cyberspace, I guess. Let's extract these libraries so you can open the gate. I know I'm skipping, not reading bits of the tutorial, but this is I feel like front-loading the map rather than the combat, it might be a mistake. We'll see. This cluster has a watcher protecting it. Most clusters will have a watcher guarding. So this is like an enemy AI thing that we're going to have to fight in a minute. One of the problems I always had with a lot of cyberpunk games, and like if you've ever played Netrunner, then Netrunner is classic for this, is they use so much jargon drawn from the genre that comes from books like Neuromancer and this kind of big lexicon of language, and then it gets inserted into the video games. And then the video games go in the opposite direction from what most games try to do, which is to try and, you know, present their world as its own thing. The card game Netrunner is really bad for this, that it just kind of assumes that as someone who is a fan of the genre, you are going to know all this lingo. If trace increases, the grid is alerted and the run becomes harder. You can hover over each trace level for more information about trace effects. I get that they want the hacking to be front and center, but in a minute, when we go into this diamond, we're going to fight something. And I think maybe this game should have led with that. This game has so much cool art in it, right? Both in terms of what's going on with the enemies and the card designs and stuff, which is what drew me to it. But the tutorial is giving us like 5 minutes of a map and text before we get to that. Everything you see is created by your console to provide you with information during combat. So the bottom of the interface is us, the top of the interface is them. It's going to do a stronghold directive, whatever that means. I like that viewing the intention of the enemy, like you get in Slay the Spire, kind of makes more sense here because they are programs. So the kind of theme makes that standard mechanic make a lot more sense. Playing cards costs clock. A card's clock cost is shown on the left next to its name. Over here, we've got how much clock we've got. This is what they cost. There's a thing called Vim that ramps up your cards as well. And Vim is here. So I think that's like a kind of charge up tech type thing like you used to get in a lot of JRPGs. And there's a passive directive here, which is, I guess, a thing you can always do. At the start of each round, this ice gains 10 buffer, which is the shield resource, I think. Okay. That feels very nice, the way that you kind of drag and play cards into the screen. Playing cards has been filling this yellow bar here. And then we get these Vim abilities, virtual memory, many cards generate it, and it's used to activate your commands and trigger some cards effects. Okay, so we've got virtual memory that we can use for these abilities that we have access to most of the time, and then also it's gonna power up certain cards so that you get kind of dual use cards that have a different version when you've got enough of this resource, which is cool. I think the battle music is in G minor, which is not a good key for me. We'll draw some extra cards. End turn, because I don't have any clock. I really like the way you found a midpoint between it feels like the enemies are using guns and the enemies are still supposed to represent sort of like, you know, virtual things. Because when you're doing everything is in virtual, it can feel really kind of like low stakes and nothing matters. So you still want the stuff that's attacking you to feel dangerous. It would be difficult for this to be someone's first deck builder, I think, because there's so much kind of like deliberate obfuscating things with the Cyberpunk language. But to be fair, Netrunner did that as well, and that is loved by hundreds of thousands of people. So definitely not going to be an accessible someone's first deck builder, but not everything needs to aim for that either. Okay, it's gonna shoot me. Defeat that sentinel so you can access that render node. Okay, so the letters on here relate to the node, and the red is telling us there's a sentinel there. The letters don't relate to the sentinel, which is what I thought might have been the case. It's also doing what Hades does, where when you pick where to go, you know what the kind of reward is going to be at that node because of the letters. Although I feel like it's going to take people a long time to learn what that set of 3 letters is on each node. So I think eventually, if you can have icons on the nodes that give people a like a mental mnemonic for like what that type of node does, it's going to be a lot quicker for people to memorize than the 3 letters. But you can already start to see how the nodes tell us what the reward is, and we can see when there's an enemy there, but we can't necessarily see what the enemy is or does. He's a chunky boy. He's going to gain some buffer and inflict tag, which shell cards cost 1 extra clock this turn. So it's going to make my defense cards more expensive. Flatline said, like a good version of the Deus Ex hacking game. That goes into the press kit. Excellent. Yeah. You have to say that it was said by Dr. Joe Baxter Webb Cyber Edition. We're just going to slash. No think, just slash. It's telling us about buffs and debuffs. Luckily, I now have a card that gives me buffer without having to use a shell card. So this is a defense card, right? Which is why it's in the blue class. That would cost 1 more because of the tag effect. But I do have a secondary way to gain buffer by using the hoplite. So I'm going to do that. And then I at least get a little bit of defense. Generator cards cost 1 extra clock. We're starting to get some cards with really cool names here. Crimson Assault, Ephemeral Edge. Just the one that gives me more things. Chris says, I have no idea what's happening. Yeah, to be fair, that is the experience of watching anyone play a Cyberpunk hacking game, because there's a sort of complexity fetishism that goes along with the genre. I think I've killed it anyway. Yeah. I need to work out how to do the little fanfare from Final Fantasy VII. if these are AI generated, then it is probably the first instance of a game where I've seen where that kind of art actually works in the game. And if they're hand drawn, then well done to your illustrator, because they look great. Amazing, not AI confirmed. They do feel very similar to the kind of the Netrunner art style, but slightly more abstract, and that does make it feel like everything is happening in the net, which is cool. Yeah, I mean, everyone in the chat as well, we've got the dev here, so please take the opportunity to ask them about things. That's really cool to have you pop in, and I love it when this happens. I mean, we have it quite often, but a lot of the time the dev is here because it's a game from our Discord and they know about the stream beforehand, whereas today you literally just got a ping 10 minutes before the stream to say, hey, I'm playing your game, and I know nothing about it. So really cool of the devs to show up and make good use of them being here. Break the target watcher. Now click on any of the nodes in the cluster. That one. You can now use the nodes freely. Before proceeding to it, let's prepare a bit more. First, let's check the compiler node. Where's the okay, down here, pick a new protocol card. But we don't have enough hash keys to do it just yet. So it's setting us up so that we're going to need to loot everything in this room before we can go into the last bit. Ooh. It's like a predator Pokemon. It's got the predator dreads, but it's sort of floaty. Hi, I love your floaty tentacles. Do you come here often? These are commands. It's taking me a little while to learn the keywords, but there aren't loads of them, so... That visual effect was so cool. Again, I just love how... I love how physical everything feels, even though we're in cyberspace. It's really, really nice. You know, see these little, filing cabinets down the side here as well. Oh, that one's got my holiday pictures in it. That's got my fan fiction in it about Buffy and Willow from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I wrote in 1999. Just over here, there's a TXT file with a list of everyone that I don't like in it. We've got lots of Vim. We've got 6 Vim. 6 plus 4. We can draw 3 cards and choose one to discard, okay. And you can discard one from any of your cards. So let's get rid of any of the generic buff cards, because we don't need that right now. Easy. We've completed the tutorial. Let's get some bass in. If you're not using the little twiddly bendy thing, are you really Cyberpunk? Welcome back to Indie Synth Clinic, the only YouTube channel where you can try and watch a game and have it constantly interrupted by an annoying man playing a synthesizer. When you do music for any sort of thinky game, it's quite hard because like the music here is very similar to the music you get in a RTS game like StarCraft or something like that, because what the player is mostly doing is thinking, right? So you don't necessarily want music that does the same things as music in an action game. You sort of want music that is constantly building tension, sort of like they play in the background on a game show, which is exactly what this is doing. and just sort of like build and build and build and build and feel like it's going somewhere but not go there, because the player is thinking and pondering and you're trying to give this kind of tense atmosphere of thinking through a problem. And there's not really a time element to this. You're trying to create the tension that the player should feel as someone who is like role-playing a hacker, but you also want to match what they're actually doing, which is thinking rather than like playing an action game. And yeah, this is great music in terms of achieving all of those things. Let's go for the kind of gambly build. So this one, it does damage, you discard a card. If it's another red card, you do extra damage. I'm always bad at playing this archetype. I'm really loss averse, so like, I just cannot play Warlock decks in Hearthstone because I hate, like, what do you call it? Post luck. Like, you make a decision and then luck happens afterwards. Just my brain really, really hates it. So I'm going to force myself to try this kind of more gambly route of having these cards that do stuff to your hand that you don't expect. Oh, look. Tyson MKO. These enemy designs are fantastic. They start off kind of cute and chibi. Oh, there's a real sort of Metroid Prime vibe to these guys, you know? They feel sort of like cool and goofy at the same time, like exactly in the middle of being cool and goofy, which is very hard to pull off. And I think, yeah, like kind of things like Shin Megami Tensei, like the demon designs in that, they kind of feel in that territory, which makes it like a nice surprise to see them. Because when you enter a fight and you don't know what's there and an enemy pops up and it's cool and interesting, it's like, ooh. And yeah, I really like that. They're really characterful. And I quite like the way you've got these card draw abilities that use a different... Because these use the virtual memory resource, which is like our yellow power-up bar. And then the cards use the clock, which is the main energy resource. And that means you don't have many situations where you're playing clock to draw cards, which always feels like a really weak choice in these games. And then we've got this teal highlight, basically to let us know that that condition is met. And that's really nice, because that stands out really well. Let's try and use this random discard. It's got a 50-50 chance. It did a blue one in the end. Pick a new protocol card. Protocols are powerful cards that change the rules of combat once played and get removed from combat afterwards. I'm going to go for the momentum one. So the commands, remember those draw abilities down the bottom right. I just picked a card that gives us loads of the virtual memory one turn to play those as well. So we're going to have some really sick turns if we combine that yellow card and this purple card. Okay, we're going to activate our protocol, which means we get a free clock from doing one of these commands. So we get to play extra cards. Relatively cheap way of making this tutorial easier to pass, as well as like putting color coding on some of these texts. So, you know, put protocol in the purple and stuff like that, or highlight it in that color. Right, and now I can use this to double the next card I play. Okay, so I'm going to use this one to double the next card I play, and it's going to play the Maker's Touch twice, which deals extra damage if the card I randomly discard is a hack. And the other two cards I have, I've only got hacks. I've only got hacks. It's free real estate. Nice.